my 17 scroll. I think you picked up what I was putting down. May I please come to Yaks Slurberg Fest? Pretty please. Pretty please. Pretty please. Pretty please.
That's, more than 17. So not asking for trouble is another episode featuring the Yaks, which is already gonna be a red flag for many considering they didn't really leave a good impression the first time. And I'm guessing this episode isn't going to do much to change people's minds because it's an episode that's just kind of out there. I mean, it's not unbearable or anything, but it just feels really forgettable for how it takes on this type of concept. Pinkie Pie is invited to Yakistan for a sacred yak tradition and attends the ceremony as a friendship ambassador on official friendship business. Okay, that's actually kind of silly in a good way. When she gets there, she spends time with the Yaks learning about their culture. Their very, very, very uninteresting culture. But when an avalanche buries the whole village in snow, they have a hard time digging themselves out. And when Pinkie suggests getting help, Prince Rutherford refuses to allow any outside help, no matter how obvious it is that they need it. As the situation gets progressively worse, Pinkie finally decides to take matters into her own hooves. I guess I should start with the biggest problem with the episode. The story is so boring. Its conflict feels very one-note, which gets more annoying the more times the Yaks convince themselves that they don't need the assistance of others. Not to mention, the pacing just drags on and on and on. It just feels so slow throughout the second act, and the first act takes a lot of time establishing its conflict. Not to mention that they put a lot of focus on a culture that's not really engaging. The third act ends up having the opposite problem, with the resolution being done really quickly with how little time the episode has left. And its ending just feels really confusing, though we'll get to that in a minute. A lot of the humor is stale too, as it revolves mostly around how prideful the Yaks are and how stubborn Prince Rutherford is acting. They don't really do anything interesting with these jokes, they just put them there as a means to drive the story forward, which results in a lot of its comedy being completely ineffective. There's also the issue with the yak culture, which is really not interesting. The reason why it's not interesting is because they don't really try to make it interesting. It's just a bunch of basic stuff that you'd see from any other culture, except here it takes place in a bunch of random huts. The only unique thing this episode offers regarding the Yaks is this ceremonial fire pit where they tell stories. But even that is just kind of glanced over and not given enough attention. There's some potential behind this, like we could learn some more about their history and their customs. But all we get is this small bit of them supposedly fighting an evil that's vaguely shown to us. And I really cannot stand how annoying Prince Rutherford is in this episode. Throughout the whole thing, he's incredibly ignorant and prideful in a very irritating manner, always rejecting help no matter how bad things get for everyone else, and poorly trying to cover it up in some attempt to not show any weakness in his spirit. This could have been done right if his pride was utilized in a way that forwarded the conflict in some way, but it doesn't. We're just kind of stuck there while he continues to put his pride before his dignity, and it's really bland and annoying. The only time he shows any other kind of character is when he pulls a prank on Pinkie over a supposedly sacred twig. But the moment is so brief that it ends up getting glossed over, and he really doesn't express any other personality outside of just being stubborn. As a matter of fact, he's also a terrible leader. Even when the other yaks start to show signs of getting tired of this snow lifestyle, he continues to push things forward thinking that they can take care of themselves. Is he really so bad of a leader that he's willing to let his village starve and freeze? And another thing, where's the king or the queen? Is the yak population really just this small community on a snowy mountainside? Are there more yak villages out there? And if there are, why aren't any of them hearing about their prince trapped in a snowy environment? That's the stuff I'd like to know, but it's never shown, and we just keep getting more of Prince Rutherford endangering his village, which again is really not interesting to see. As for the ending, it just feels really confusing. I get the moral that they're going for, I think, that sometimes you just need to help people even if they don't ask for it or think they don't need it. And honestly, that depends on the situation itself. There are times where helping a cause without asking can end up making the situation worse if you don't know enough about the situation or the people involved. I guess it makes sense for this episode in particular since we're clearly shown the situation, but I don't think that it's a message that should be taken to heart. At least not if you're faced with a situation that you're not experienced with. And you also got Prince Rutherford's way of reacting to Pinkie Pie getting the other girls to help out. He says that they helped without asking or without the yaks knowing about it, and that somehow makes it okay? Even enough for Pinkie to be an honorary yak? Was this supposed to be Prince Rutherford's stubborn way of admitting that he made a mistake, or is this actually a part of yak culture? The episode doesn't make that clear, which just makes the ending even more confusing. The only enjoyable element of the episode is Pinkie herself. The way she's characterized in this episode actually benefits the way that the story is put together, even if it is paced badly. At first, she does seem pushy and childish in how she keeps sending letters to be invited to the festival, but after that, her childish nature has a good sense of self-control. She puts effort into behaving herself while on foreign land and adjusting to the customs of another race. And she's pretty respectful in how she gets into the culture so easily. She's also very aware of her environment and the situation that she's in, given how she points out logic in Rutherford's presence and finds herself annoyed with his attitude over time. And when she sees what actual effect Rutherford is having on the other yaks, she understands that needed action has to be taken for the good of the village. She's being reasonable, logical, and determined for this incident, and it's carried through in a useful way. Instead of just being oblivious the whole time, she's understanding and doesn't do anything to make the problem worse, while also providing some good laughs with her bubbly nature. The only funny moments of the episode are when she's happily playing around with the other characters, and she still manages to maintain an adult mindset. But aside from that, I really can't vouch for the episode too much. Even with Pinkie providing some good characterization and funny jokes, the rest of the episode is a real drag to the point that I can't fully recommend it for anyone. I guess if you just want to see Pinkie Pie messing around with the yaks, it's fine, but other than that, not asking for trouble is a pretty forgettable endeavor. I might see it again, but not anytime soon. MisAnthro Pony, over and out.